This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, Show 21. We want to be very secure.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba. Ramsey broke his foot twice within a 2-month period because he was just too impatient to wait for it to heal. Some things just never change.
Hello, SE Nation, and welcome to another show. I am fairly excited about the conversation that I had today with Jason. And by fairly, I mean a lot, because this was interesting. He's been doing this for a very long time, and he has knowledge in a wide array of stuff. Like we talked about how he started as an SE, different types of SE, as in SLED SE. I've never heard of that before. Named account SE, specialist SE, working for startups, mentorship. We talked about a lot of different things, and all that packed into 45 minutes. So this was an awesome show, in my opinion. I hope you guys like it. The show notes and Jason's LinkedIn profile will be available on the show notes, which is at wethesalesengineers.com/show21. He enjoys helping people as much as I do, so he wanted to let people. He wants to help people. So if you want to connect with him, and feel free to ask him questions. If he doesn't answer you, that means he's busy, but I'm sure he'll get back to you as soon as possible. So I started a Twitter for some housekeeping now. Started a Twitter page or Twitter handle. Can't speak. At We the SEs. Follow me on Twitter, and subscribe to the show if you enjoy it, and share it with people. Thank you, guys. Hi, Jason. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, it's definitely my pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for let me postpone when I couldn't make it on time a couple of days ago.
Not a problem.
I'll start off the same way I start off with all of my guests. Maybe we can talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are.
Sounds good. So, when we just start off on how I became an SE and my career as an SE?
Sure. Yeah, we can start with that.
Okay. Well, originally I worked for a telecommunications company out of Bryan College Station. They were actually based out of Paramus, New Jersey, but they were in the process of getting acquired by another company. So I had a European boss and I had an American boss, and they were trying to fight over who ran the show. So a little company by the name of Accent Technologies came by to give us a demonstration, and I just jokingly said, "Hey, you're not looking for a sales engineer, are you?" And they went, "Hey, actually we are." And they asked me, what I knew about their intrusion prevention system, and at the time I didn't know anything about it. So I gave them what my version of their product was, and they said, "That's pretty good. Does it work that way?" I have no idea. So they said, "You're hired." So that was in February of 2000. Then Accent was acquired by Symantec in December of 2000, and I was with Symantec until 2011. I was a SLED SE, I was a named accounts SE, I was a channel SE, and then I was a specialist for their SIM product, which had some issues. One of the roles of an SE really is to, be that trusted advisor and that guidance for customers. And at the time, the product had a lot of their SIM 4.0 product had a lot of issues. And I told my boss, I was like, "Well, I'm a firefighter. You fly me all over the United States to put out fires." I said, "I got 2 buckets of gas. What do you want me to pour them on?" And I went, "Yeah, maybe you should try a different role." So at that point, I actually became a program manager. I was still working for the SE organization, built demos, scripts, virtual machines, those sorts of things for the SE organization. We kind of grew that. Funny thing was, we actually built something similar to AWS or SkyTap, or those types of web-based demoing systems. We actually started that back in, I think, 2003 or 2004. and ran that out of one of our Virginia offices for a while. By the time I left, I think we had about 1,500 users on it. They were doing demos globally. It was a lot of fun. As all things with large companies, sometimes they have downturns. So I was caught on a production course or riff. So was out of work for a little bit, but with my network, I had people asking me, hey, come work for me, and a buddy of mine that I had worked with at Symantec said, hey, I work for this company called Q1 Labs. It was a SIM like QRadar, and I thought I was done with SIMs. I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with another SIM product ever. I'm done with that. He said, just take a look at it, and I was pretty impressed. It was a good product. So I got hired on there in 2011, and then we got acquired by IBM about a year later. And I put up with IBM for a little while. I'm not a big company person. I like smaller, organizations. Big companies, you tend to get lost or get stuck in the bureaucratic process or the red tape, that sort of thing. So we were actually, my sales rep and I, our former VP of sales had left QRadar after Q1 Labs after the IBM acquisition. He was working at a stealth mode company called Netscope, and so he pulled us over December of 2013, January 2014. So that's when I started working for Netscope, and it'll be 5 years at the end of the year that I've been with Netscope. And it's been pretty amazing to see, the company start. I was SE number 4. I think we're now up to 60 some odd SEs globally. So it's really cool to see a company grow from that small to international and large company.
Okay, well, seems like you've been doing this for a while.
19 years. So 19. Yeah, a couple days.
19 years and a couple of days. Okay. Hey, so maybe we can define a couple of things for the people listening.
Sure.
What's a channel SE?
Sure. So yeah, I listed off a few different types of SE. So a channel SE typically is an SE dedicated to working with partners. Some companies prefer to sell direct, which in my opinion, I think is the wrong way to go. If you've got partners that resell your product, it's a force multiplier. It gives you the ability to have more eyes and ears and, helping you sell the product. And the channel SE's role is to train up that partner, whether it be a reseller or partner. There's different types of resellers and partners that are out there. But you get them trained, you get them comfortable and being able to pitch and sell the product, and then you provide additional services to help them, whether it be with demos or scripts or resources, that sort of thing. I also mentioned SLED SE, which is state local education. That is a really interesting position. That's state and local. Let's just say move at a different pace than your enterprise customers. State and local folks typically, if the network's on fire and there's viruses and everything's broken and it's 3:00 in the afternoon, they go, you know what? They'll be here tomorrow. We're going home. Not so much an enterprise. With an enterprise, it could be 2:00 in the morning. You're not leaving until this is fixed. So it's a different world in the SLED space.
Yes, I didn't work as an SE there, but I did work in network design and had to support those companies. It was interesting.
Yeah.
So, and you also mentioned named account SEs and specialist SEs. If we can briefly go over those.
Sure. Yeah. So a named account SE is probably, or a generalist SE. Generalist SE would be, you are assigned to a territory. You cover whoever comes along. You've got greenfield. You've got accounts that you work on. A named SE is typically where you've got a specific set of accounts that at the end of the day which accounts you're going to be working on. As a generalist SE, you work on whatever comes your way. Whoever is, depending on where your product is in the maturity cycle, you may be chasing people, or you may have people chasing you. And for a specialist SE or for a named SE, the specialists typically focus, if you've got a company, say, Symantec, McAfee, IBM, those sorts of things, they have 10, 20, hundreds of products. And the specialist SE would focus on a specific product or product line to be able to provide more value and to be able to go deeper on those. As a generalist SE, if you're working for a company that has 30 products, it sometimes can be a challenge to be able to keep up to date on those particular products and to be able to provide the value. A lot of companies will provide a lot of training, and they'll also have the specialists or overlays is another term that you'll hear, that you'll have an SE that will work with a generalist to be able to provide a deeper level of knowledge.
I agree with you. I
Yeah.
agree with you about the journalist SE. So I have a lot of products in my portfolio. I would say I only know 3 of them very deeply, and the rest I don't sell as much. So I don't. I just
Right.
I forget about those until there's a requirement, and that's when I bring in my specialist or overlay. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
and you mentioned also that so most people try to go into the SE role from within the same company, or they just try to apply to any random company. What I heard you say is that the way you got into being an SE is by asking, like you were a client of the company trying to sell you something.
Correct.
Right.
That is exactly right.
And
It was more of a joke because at the time, like I said, I had multiple bosses. They were fighting it out. I was like, maybe there's this opportunity, and I really didn't know what it was about, which is kind of strange because there is no, and this is something I've actually researched. There is no sales or especially SE track in college. You can't go to college to learn how to be an SE.
yeah,
It's just something that you fall into, and everybody has a different story, and they're interesting to hear.
yeah. Well, I have a similar story where I was a customer of the company I became an SE for, and I think that's a good way to get into being an SE, because one, in theory, you're using the product that they're selling, and 2, you already have connections with at least one of the customers that you would be selling to.
Absolutely.
So
And you understand the pain because it's one of the things, the longer I'm an SE, sometimes the developers I see on a product, it's like, what were you thinking when you developed this? This is not how the customer uses this product.
yeah,
So being able to experience that pain and be able to explain that knowledge to the developer, to your product management is very important.
right. Yeah, I agree with you. You have an understanding of how the customer actually uses the product, not with the way it was intended to be used.
Exactly, because it's never going to be used the way that it was developed.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna talk about product managers in a bit. So, but first, I wanted to come back to something you said: big companies versus small organizations. You prefer working for small organizations, and when we talked earlier, specifically startups.
Correct.
What,
That's correct.
like, other than being lost in a big organization, why do you find it fun to work for a startup?
Um, to me, the startups, it's a risk reward sort of position. There's going to be a lot more risk with a startup because you don't know if the company's going to make it, if the product's going to make it. There's a lot of factors, but there's usually bigger upside. There's typically options involved. There's looking at IPOs. So I was at Accents and had options there, and whenever they were acquired by Symantec, I got a little bit, but I mean they had been around for a while, so it wasn't a very big payoff. Q1 Labs had been around for 10 years. I mean, it's kind of funny. They were 300 employees whenever IBM acquired them. I had some options there. It was kind of nice, but it wasn't anything big. With a startup, you're going to work your tail off. There's not going to be, hey, can I have a script to be able to demo this? Or, what is marketing, depending on, how early that startup is. Like I said, I came into this directly out of stealth. So we had marketing, we had a product. The product was incredibly well polished. I was thoroughly impressed with it, which is why I went there. It wasn't vaporware, because that's the other thing with startups. I know a bunch of my friends that have gone to work for startups, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to be doing this in a few months. We're going to be doing this. And after a few months and nothing appears, they start to wonder, okay, is this going to be real or not? Can the developers that are behind this actually be able to pull it off? And that's one of the things that when I went to Netscope, I looked at the developers, I looked at the management. There was folks that had been around. All of them have gray hair, but they've been around for a while, and had done amazing things in their past lives. So I was excited to jump in and to be able to help out. But in the beginning with a startup, there's not a lot of direction. You kind of go where the customer, the prospect, kind of take you, especially if you're in a market that is relatively new. Because 5 years ago, the CASB market was a year old. It's something that Gartner coined. We all hate the term CASB, but it is what it is. So it's more descriptive of what the market is. But it wasn't really, yes, there was a term for it, but it wasn't well defined. And customers, you would say, hey, I work for a CASB. First question they would say is, what's that? So you had to not only define what space you were in, but you had to say what the value of your particular product was. So it's a challenge. And I love challenges like that. I love being able to help and mentor other SEs. Me personally, I'm not really into the management track. There's a bunch of different tracks you can take as an SE, but that's not really one of the ones that I personally enjoy. One, because I'm horrible with paperwork. And being a good manager, you have to keep up with a lot of things. But from a startup perspective, it's a small organization, it's a small company. I can call our CEO, I can call our VPs. I've got that direct path. Whereas with a large company, there's process and protocols in place to be able to get information. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And the other thing is with a startup, they're a lot more nimble. You can see the product evolve in a very short amount of time. With a company like a Symantec or a McAfee or an IBM, it may be 12 to 18 months before you see the next rev of a product come out. And that's your customer saying, hey, can you fix this? And you're like, well, yeah, we just released a new version, so you'll see that in about 18 months, which sometimes tough. So that's why I like the smaller, more nimble companies to work with and for.
Well, just to comment on that last point, I find it strange that some companies actually put out a release like once a year or once every 18 months. Most companies I worked with have 2 or 3 releases a year, with sometimes patches if stuff doesn't work. But
yeah, well, so and things have changed really in the last 5 years. So my experience in the extended release was more, like I said, before 2011, 2013 kind of time frame, where they would do a major release once a year, but they would do minor releases or patches, once a quarter or maybe once a month, sort of thing. But that's just fixing what's broken. It's not, you want a new feature, a major feature in a product. It may take you 6, 9, 12, 18 months to be able to, before you can see it. Whereas with a startup, you can ask for something, and depending on the value of that feature, you may see it within a month. It may take 2 or 3 months. It just depends on what the dev resources would take to be able to bring it to fruition.
Right, and the importance of that is the fact that if you don't get the feature in time, you very likely might lose the deal. Is that?
And in some cases, yeah. In some cases, that's absolutely true.
All right. I wanted to ask you. You mentioned mentor. You mentor a lot of people. From what I've seen, and that's in multiple companies that I've worked for, whether it's in sales or anywhere, you get a mentor for like 2-3 days when you first join. And it's not an official mentor. It's someone who's been doing it for a while. There is no official mentor project or program. So how do you mentor SEs?
Sure. And the bigger the company, the more likely you'll have a defined mentor-mentee relationship, that sort of thing. The smaller, the startups, it's basically so now we split into east, west, and central. Actually, northeast, southeast, central, west territories. But for the first 4 years or so, when I was on the west, I would help to do the technical interviews for folks. And then whenever new hires would come on board, we would have a new hire process. But typically what would happen is, we would offer, hey, anybody that's doing demos, anybody who's just doing a sale, a prospect call with a customer, have the new people join in on that call, listen in on a WebEx or a Zoom meeting and those sorts of things. So there's the unofficial aspect. The the other side of that is we're heavy users of Slack. I think from a communication standpoint, Slack will probably be more heavily used than email in the next few years. But as a region and then individually, we have or not really organizations, but there's several architects within the organization that the SEs come to whenever there's a problem, especially in my region. Um, it's kind of funny. My boss, I actually hired him, knowing full well that I didn't want to be a manager, but I hired him because I knew in a year we would be having a manager slot open. So it's not often you get to hire your boss, but I mentored him for while he was learning the ropes, and even to this day he still calls me up and said, hey Jason, how do we do this? How do we, since I've been around for a long time. So it's not really a strict mentorship program, but it's a knowing the resources that you have within an organization to be able to go to that are there that'll respond in a timely manner to help you out, that sort of thing.
So a question about hiring your boss.
Yeah,
If he pisses you off, can you fire him, or is that too late?
he's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. I don't see he was at Cisco for 20 years. He was a manager's manager at Cisco, and that, when I hired him, I was like, dude, you sure you want to be an SE again? And he's a phenomenal SE. He's a phenomenal manager. I don't see that happening, but we have a very good relationship.
Yeah, that's good. I wish you could fire him if you wanted to. I don't think that's how it works. But it's
No,
I talked to a few managers, and almost every manager that I talked to, especially SE manager or mainly SE managers, they miss the SE role as soon as they get promoted to a manager role. So there's a thought there.
yeah. Well, he's still he has a backfill that his sales rep now has an SE, but he still loves to hop in and help out with things. His philosophy, and I agree with him, is be in the field, help be a resource for your folks to be able to get roadblocks out of the way, and he's phenomenal at that.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. Good managers don't come
That
often.
is very true, and depending on the bigger companies, when I was at Symantec, it was not unheard of. If you were at the company for 5 years, you could have anywhere between 3 and 11 managers. So over that course of that 5 years, so which is crazy.
Okay. Well, yeah, that is crazy. I've been working for 10 years and I've had 3 managers.
That's good.
Yeah. Not as an SE, all of them. I've been as an SE as 4, but I've had 2 managers. But it's still not bad. So I just forgot my own question. That's a very good job, Ramsey. All right. I'll come back if I remember the question. I'll come back to it. We talked about product managers and marketing, like mostly product managers right now when we're chatting. How do you like to work with the product managers? How do you get them involved?
So the main thing that our role as an SE and working with the product management team is use case gathering, information gathering for them, because we're their eyes and ears in the field. We help them to drive where the product is going. One of the things, and I actually count myself as being lucky, is being a program manager for 5 years at Symantec. I had to deal with the gathering of requirements and dealing with resources and allocating things. And so I have a kind of a special, I guess, viewpoint on their role. Typically, whenever we ask for a new feature, we make sure, okay, what are they asking for? How are they going to be using? What's the key thing is what's the use case? A lot of people are like, oh, well, that feature sounds cool. What is the specific use case that it's going to be used at, and how is that going to add value to the customer? And that's what's key, because if you can't provide to product management the reason why or the dollar figure why this needs to be done, then it's hard for them to justify, diverting resources into something that was already planned.
So do you find that product managers in general visit customers as much as we as customer facing people think they should, or how does that work?
Um, it's a challenge. One of the things you got to be careful of as a product manager is not to be myopic or reactive. Having a product management team that has a vision, because you're going to have customers that are going to come up and say, I've got $200,000 or I've got $1 million and I need this, feature. Okay, but how is that going to impact our product in the long run? Is that the path that we want to go down? I mean, I've had conversations with our product management where I'm like, we really need this for a specific deal. That deal may be $200,000 or $300,000, which is would be significant, but in the overall grand scheme of things, it's not as big an impact, and it may not be the necessary path that the company is going down. So having the knowledge and having regular roadmaps and the vision of the company to know where to go, it's good for the SEs to help provide that information to the product managers. Yes, I still think the product managers need to visit with the customers. We have a customer advisory board that meets on a fairly regular basis to help drive that directly. So typically, with most companies, you'll have the path is the customer talks to the sales rep or to the SE. The SE works with support or works with engineering, then that information gets up to product management. And by having a customer advisory board, you can have the product management can sit down directly with the customers and say, hey, what would you like to see? What path would you like to see us go in?
And I also like here do like you work in a startup, so I'm asking you this: do you feel like the product management team shares their business plan for the next 5 years with you, which would also allow you to understand where they want to go and which features they want to go after, or is that lacking?
The they share the direction is the exact 5 year plan. In today's environment, 5 years is a lifetime away in terms of features. Even 3 years, and I actually just had this conversation with our VP of product management last week because one of my major customers said, "Hey, we want a 3 year roadmap. Can you provide that?" And he and I were talking, and it was like, wow, 3 years. It's like, well, we know the direction we want to go, the features, but from a startup perspective, we release new features, new features to the product every single month. We have a release train that is monthly. Um, we're actually working towards CI/CD, which is continuous integration, continuous development, which is the same sort of thing that Google and Facebook and what they actually release on an hourly basis, which is actually mind-boggling that actually happens. But that's the path that especially cloud-based organizations are doing is being able to respond quickly and be able to provide those release trains very quickly. Um, but a 5 year plan that's in the cloud space that's almost unheard of. A 3 year plan, you have a direction, but as far as a tactical roadmap, you're looking at a year to 18 months out is typically what's shared.
Yeah, I think what I meant by that more like 5 year was an example, but
Yeah,
I understand
I
your
know.
point, and you answered my question. But also talking about like if they give you direction, which you already said, towards where they want to go, you know where you should focus your time versus hey,
Exactly.
following the shiny object and hey, this customer said he wants this, can we get that? And focus on a niche instead of trying to service everybody. So,
And competitor A has that. Like,
oh,
yeah, but that's not really what we do.
from what I see, product managers hate it when I say the competitors has this
Yes.
or it's like I don't care. That's not what like no, I don't care. Good for them. They wasted their time. It's like, okay, that's a conversation for another day. So, what's the difference
Right.
between product managers and marketing managers?
So the marketing manager, the product managers are the ones that work directly with engineering to actually bring that code to fruition. Okay, you ask for feature A, and they go and they negotiate that with engineering. How long is this going to take? And they bring feature A to the product. A marketing manager is someone who works more on the, well, what are the trends that are going on? What are, what's the competition doing? What is, it's more from a messaging standpoint. And I love our marketing managers. I actually just sat down with ours on Tuesday to come up with a thought leadership presentation for an ISSA meeting that's coming up. So it's more on the messaging, whereas the product managers themselves are more, it's more tactical for them.
And so, just to recap, product managers like take the requirements from the customers and then negotiate that with the developers. Marketing managers take whatever the PMs said that is going to be on the roadmap and try to come up with like case studies and stuff like that.
It's case studies and the marketing. It's you can have a product, but if you can't tell the story of why that particular feature is important, then it's not going to sell very well. And really, the story is the key piece. There is what's the value? Why is this important? Why should you take a look at it at all?
Yeah, and I think it's also important, and you said that to figure out what problem it solves.
Exactly.
I see a lot of marketing slides that are just talking about the feature itself.
Right.
Like we can
It's
we can do this,
that's my
but
PowerPoint.
yeah, like you can do this, but why? So what? Well, how's that going to help my customer? What am I going to sell it to them?
Keep it simple, and they'll get it.
Yeah, and I want like this is not on our list of things that we discussed, but I wanted to check with you. Do you know what the difference is between the sales and business development? Because now that's coming up more and
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's customer success. That's the hottest growing segment, and so between sales development and business development. So an SDR, sales development rep, is typically it's more on the sales side. Um, that is how do we get things into the funnel, and for hopefully the SE the listeners know what the funnel is. Somebody said that they have interest. They may or may not be interested in you specifically, but they have an interest. So the more of those numbers you can gather, and the reason why it's a funnel is you put a bunch of stuff in the top, and hopefully you've got some stuff coming out of the bottom that are qualified, meaning that you've asked the questions, they've answered the questions, they're interested, they have budget. I see that a lot. They're like, "Oh yeah, this is really cool. We have no budget." Okay, we want those sorts of things. So the sales development reps help to get more things into the funnel. The business development reps, at least for us, are more from a partner perspective, whether it be a channel, meaning the folks that resell our product, or one of the things that we're seeing more and more in the cloud is companies aren't standalone. Technologies are not standalone. What we do is a CASB, but we rely on IDPs or identity providers like an Okta, One Login, a Microsoft ADFS, those sorts of things. Anybody that manages identity. We have encryption partners that we work with. So that's one of the what BizDev works on is hey, how can we get our product work with your product and then come up with a solution rather than saying here's I'm just selling my product. It's how do I fit a need and solve a need with an overall solution, whether that solution comes from a single company or it may come from more than one company.
So, sorry, you've been saying CASB. I've been hearing
Yeah,
SaaS for some reason. What
yeah.
is
Sorry,
CASB?
sorry. Yeah, that's that, and that's the bad thing about SEs is we get stuck in our own nomenclature, and we don't think about it. That those that aren't necessarily exposed to our particular world. So CASB is Cloud Access Security Broker. That basically means we are a broker in between a user and an application. It's similar to a firewall, but it's a lot more in depth on
Okay.
what's going on. And then there was another phrase that I used that I didn't explain. CASB, and then there's something else. IDP, which is identity provider. I explained that one.
Okay. Well, because I just did a quick search for CASB, and it means Canadian artist selected by you. So
CASB is the acronym.
oh, CASB. I thought CSBY. Okay, that will change things.
Yep.
All right. Let me look that up.
Yeah, that's so in the last 5 years, it's grown. It's gone from 14 to 15 players down to now there's about 4 main players. Everybody claims they have those features, but it's interesting to see how the market is kind of converging.
So I'm not in the security world per se.
Right,
I
you're
help.
in that.
Yeah, I help customers test their security, right?
Yep.
And I'm reading a lot of paperwork about that. It seems that there's a shortage of people who know security.
Yes, it pays well. I'll put it that way.
Okay, good. So if you want to get paid well as the listeners, if they want to get paid well, they should go into security. That's what you're saying.
That is, yeah.
Become
There
an
is
expert.
a huge deficit. I probably on average a week, I probably have 4 or 5 recruiters a week, pinging me going, "Hey, come work for this company." Um, and in terms of, and I know I right now I could. There's probably 4 different positions that if I knew a security person that I could get them a job. It's and this is just in the Texas, Houston area. Um, so it's very hot. The big thing is the CISSP, which is the security. ISC squared is the body that runs that one. But with SEs, sometimes it's certifications that help you open doors to various roles. But that one on the security side, CISSP is the big one.
So the jobs that are being offered, are they for a SE role or some other role?
They're all over the place. So there's network, so NOC people that are in the security operations center, the network operations center. So an analyst, there's analyst roles that they're looking for. There's SE roles that they're looking for. There's sales roles that they're looking for. The biggest thing is there's just not enough people that are getting security specific training. And to be security trained, you have to understand, servers and workstations and networking too. You can't just say, oh, well, I know how to apply the, NIST, or I know how to apply, certain different types of security protocols. You got to know the networking behind it. You got to know the servers and all that other stuff to do it. So, a lot of people, what I see is typically people will either start in networking and move into security, or they'll start in system administration and move into security. I actually started in system administration, went into networking for a while, and that's how I got into security. They said, hey, here's a PIX firewall. You know how to manage it? And I went, yeah, okay, I'll figure it out.
So feel free to say none of your business on this next question. Why haven't you taken the other jobs?
Mostly because it's just not the right fit for me. There's certain technologies that I'm passionate for. There's companies that want me to go back to work for them. I'm like, no. There's companies. One of them was it blew me away, and I'll be frank, it was a 300K OTE, which I was like, you got to okay, I'm listening,
Yeah.
because that's definitely more than I make now. But they said it's a sled roll, and I went, yeah, good luck with that. No thanks. It's to me. I mean, and sled. I'm not knocking sled anyway. It's just it's not my personality. I get frustrated with sled folks because they don't want to make a decision or want to move on anything at all. It usually takes them anywhere between 18 months to 4 years to make a decision on something, and I'm not exaggerating there. It's state and local just does not move fast, and I prefer to work with enterprises and Fortune 100.
All right. So to summarize, you want a good job, go into one being an SE, two
Yes.
in the security industry.
Yes.
All right, you hear that, everybody? Go. All right. So, well, that was how can one. The next question was how can one get into sales, but we already discussed a couple of points. Well, one is go work for your provider.
Right.
Do you have any ideas from you've been doing this for a while? So have you seen SEs come in from all walks of life?
I do. I've seen SEs come in from support. I've seen support folks. Well, that's the same thing. Support folks come in to be SEs. Professional services folks make great SEs because they know what works. They know what's broken. They know they They're the ones that are in the weeds, getting stuff done. They make great SEs. The biggest thing is to move from a highly technical role into the SE role is still technical, but you have to be able to um, provide the value proposition. You have to be able to speak the business value of why what you're selling is needed. Because if you can't provide that business value, the why for the customer, the use case for the customer, then it doesn't matter how cool the interface is or what it does. They're not going to get it. You have to be able to tell the story and be able to relate that. And sometimes highly technical people aren't good at telling stories. They're not good at providing that vision. And it really with the customer, it is a vision that you're trying to here's what we as a company are seeing. Here's where we're seeing things move to, and here's the reason why our product is going to help you get to that state.
So I think that's specifically important in security, mainly because I'm talking with a lot of security people who tell me that everybody wants security, but nobody wants to pay for it
Right.
until after the fact, after they're hacked or after there's an issue. Is that does do you see that in your world as well?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny, people like, oh, we haven't been hacked. And I always follow that up that of. Because it honestly, and because the um, the visibility and the what's going on in your typical corporate network. Now, organizations are getting better. What I've seen some doozies over my almost 20 years. I've seen servers dual home to the internet and to the back office,
Yeah.
which I had to bite my lip really hard not to say who did that.
So
Um,
just not everybody here is in the networking world.
that's
So
right.
can you
Yeah.
explain why that is dangerous?
Exactly. Yeah, I forget the audience that you're covering. So from a security perspective and from a networking perspective, you want to segment things from various levels of access. Your databases, your web servers, you only want them accessed from the front door. You don't want to leave a back door into those devices to be able to. That's where breaches come from. So when I'm saying dual home, that means there was an interface, network interface that was open to the internet, and there was a network interface that was open to the corporate network. So if you came in for the internet and you were able to gain access to that machine, you had free access to the corporate internet through that machine that typically was going right around a firewall. It's not a good approach to things. You typically want to do layered approach, or if security is always joking about the onion, and having multiple layers of the onion and a multi-layered approach. And typically, people want to mix and match technologies so that if one of them fails you, and no product is 100%. Anybody that says their product is kind of like the whole McAfee and their the Bitcoin wallet being unhackable. But that's anytime somebody says something's unhackable, laugh at them because they are so full of it. It's not even fun.
Like I was talking to a guy the other day. I'm not sure if people are interested in this story, but I'm gonna say it anyways. And he was complaining that people don't think about security until after they're hacked.
That's
And
absolutely
and we come up with like analogies. That's like someone trying to buy life insurance after they die. Like
exactly.
so, yeah, it's kind of strange that people don't think about that. But
Well, it's more akin to crashing your car and not having insurance, and then wondering why you're having to pay so much money to get things fixed. When had you had, and security really is it's an insurance policy.
yeah,
You are paying money to implement things that are going to hopefully keep you from having to spend a whole lot more money further down the road.
yeah, and I feel like I can talk to you for hours about this, but let's bring it back to
Sure.
so, like whatever my listeners would want to hear. So we were talking about how someone can get into sales engineers. We were starting to discuss like the different walks of people coming into. You said professional services,
Yeah.
support. Uh, is there any other? What's the common trait between all of them?
Um, Typically, most people would say extroverted, but I would disagree with that. I'm an introvert. I don't like being in crowds. I don't like, being around a ton of people. I don't like stadiums, that sort of thing. But I like talking to people. It's passion. I would say, find something that you're really, really interested in, and being able to understand it deeply. and being able to sell that passion. You want other people to be as passionate about it as you are, or maybe not as passionate, but that's a trade. For security specifically. It is puzzles, because that's what security is. You're going to be presented with portions of a picture. You don't have the whole thing, and you have to fill in the blanks. Networking can be that way as well. Sometimes.
Yeah, if you find a customer that's just as passionate as you, that makes your job a whole lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And also from a common trait, I feel like almost every company looking for an SE, they're either looking for a pre-existing SE or at least someone who has worked with customers and proven themselves with customers, which is
Correct. That's why I'm saying, customer support,
yeah,
professional services. They're not selling, but they're working right. They're dealing with technical issues and bringing them to fruition, hopefully.
right. So once someone becomes an SE, and you mentioned that you're not in the engineering track, but what would generally be the next steps after like being a junior SE, intermediate SE, senior SE? What's after that? What's the career progression?
Yeah, and I've seen different companies have different things, but there's typically, there's principal, but that's basically just higher levels on the same track.
Yeah.
Which asking for, what are some additional tracks? And along the same veins are architect SEs, where you're not working directly with maybe a single sales rep. You're more of an overlay and helping people to design architectures. That's actually a lot of fun. To be able to you fly in and work with big customers. But as far as I would actually see SEs moving into product management roles. They've been on the ground. They know the things. They've got to learn the product management or the project management aspect of it, which is a whole other kettle of fish. I actually did that. So there's product management, there's product marketing managers, there is competitive analysis, there's program management, which that was my role at Symantec for 5 years. Is basically I was in an SE, but I developed tools and scripts and things that for the SEs. So there's a number of different paths that you can take.
So SE enablement, that's the...
Yes, SE enablement, yeah, that's exactly it.
I think that's also part of business development, trying to get all the information and provide that for the SEs who will sell the product when it's actually available.
It can be, yeah. The bigger the company, the more those roles are separated. But the smaller the company, yeah, you're gonna be wearing a few different hats.
Okay. And and I've talked to a few people who are in product management, and I feel like an SE usually has a higher salary than a product manager within the same company. So is that...
It depends. I honestly don't know what the salary ranges for product management is. I think it really depends on overall experience. I think if you've been an SE for 10, 15 years and you move into product management, you're still probably going to be making the same. You're not going to be on a commission basis necessarily. A lot of times product managers are there maybe incentives based on how their product line is doing, and so to speak, rather than what's my quota sort of thing. So it's going to be a different commission structure, but I think it really depends more on experience necessarily than just straight out pay grades. Okay. I guess is what I'm trying to
say. Where do you see your career going? Like, are you going to be an SE?
Yeah, I enjoy. I've done multiple roles. I like being a single contributor. I also like being in that sales enablement role. So at some point, I'll probably move into either an architect or a sales enablement role. So that like I said, I like being a mentor. I like being able to take my knowledge and making other people successful. I like being successful, but if I can make 10 or 20 or 100 other people successful, then that's an even bigger one in my book.
Nice. That's an admirable place to go. I love also helping people, which is the reason I'm doing this, and for selfish reasons as well, because I get to learn from people like you, and we talked about mentors. This is the way I get mentors, by making a podcast and talking to people like you, and I really appreciate your time today. We covered all the topics that we said we were going to talk about, except for one, actually. Do you still have time? Like maybe 5 minutes?
Yeah,
So there's one topic we want to talk about. You've experienced both yearly quotas and quarterly quotas.
Yes.
Can you talk about the differences? Which one do you find is better in your opinion, or and any more information that you can provide about that?
There's ups and downs to both. The yearly quota, it takes longer to get into accelerators. So, I'll explain that a little bit more in depth. Again, I'm trying to remember that you may have a wider audience. So, from a, a quota perspective, once you hit 100%, then some companies allow you to get into what are called accelerators, where you get paid, 1.5 times or 2 times what your normal, percentage would be. Typically for a deal, you would get, a portion of that deal as your incentive from a commission standpoint. Um, on the hourly, the yearly quota, you've got the full 12 months in order to be able to get to that 100%. On a quarterly basis, you have 3 months to hit that 100%. Now, your quota is going to be a quarter of what the yearly goal is, but the ups and downs is one. The up is you can get into accelerators a lot faster. The down is it resets every 3 months, so you're chasing that 100%. But the other advantage of the quarterly quotas that I would say is, say you have a bad quarter, typically like the summer months, and different companies start their fiscal year at a different time. We actually start our fiscal year in February. We actually roll January into Q4, so that way all those deals that you're stressing over at Christmas that are inevitably going to push wind up in January and you close and you're like, hey, I still had a great Q4. So it's kind of a nice thing. But from a quarterly perspective, the summer months are just slow. Everybody goes on vacation. Nobody wants to do anything. And if you've got a quota for those 3 months, you're still trying to close business. And you may not, reach that quota, but you've got 3 other quarters where you can catch up and hopefully to be able to reach your 100%.
And is the quarterly quotas for the entire year preset, or does it when you're done the first quarter they give you the quota for the next quarter?
So this is the first time I've seen quarterly. I really like quarterly. The way that, because we are a subscription, so our quotas actually will change per quarter. We are lucky that we actually get paid on renewals. So because I am worried, I'm concerned about customers coming back year after year. I still maintain a relationship with them, that sort of thing, to be able to make sure that they come back. So I get paid on it when they renew. Whereas with other companies, you sell it to the customer and they come back and renew. You may or may not get paid on that renewal. But for most organizations that I've seen in the past, you didn't get paid on renewals. You got paid on new logos that you signed. So it depending on if you have renewals coming up that quarter, typically there's a certain amount for the that's you would be given, and then you would have the renewals would be on top of that. So they still want you to close new business. So if you've got 3 renewals coming up this quarter, it's not going to those are in the bag. I don't have to worry about it. No, those are on top of your regular quota. So that's how I've seen the structure, and I think it works great.
And I know we've only seen this once, but generally speaking, do companies take into consideration that almost everybody's on vacation in the summer while assigning the quota?
Oh yeah. It's the company's goals is to meet your quota, whether it be quarterly or yearly. So they're wanting to attain those quarterly quotas, but they fully realize that there's going to be certain quarters where the quotas, say that 5 times fast, are just going to be low, and they realize that you got a chance to make it up. And
Okay, all right. Well, that's great. I'm done. I got nothing else to ask you. We covered everything, so I appreciate it. Again, I appreciate your time, and we'll catch up at some other point. Thank you.
Sure, and if anybody has questions, are you going to include my contact information? Because, like I said, you're doing this to help other people. I'm happy to do the same. If they want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to chat with them.
Yeah, so I will have your LinkedIn information on the website, on the show notes, which will be show 21. So we the sales engineers.com/show 21. I'll have your LinkedIn. Is there another contact you want to share, or will that suffice?
No, that'll work. That'll work.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Jason. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ramsey. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
And that was my full conversation with Jason. Thank you, Jason, for being on the show. Again, as I mentioned in the intro, this was awesome. I really enjoyed it. The show notes are at wethesalesengineers.com/show 21. Jason's LinkedIn is there, so feel free to connect. If you are enjoying this content, please share it. Share it on Twitter, which at WeTheSEs. Share it on LinkedIn. Share it wherever you want to share it. And leave ratings and reviews wherever you listen to it. That will help me reach more people, help me help more people. And this is why I'm doing this. It's fun. I'm getting mentors just by talking to people on the podcast. Hopefully you feel like they're your virtual mentors as well. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys. And I'll see you guys next week. With that, this is Ramsey signing off.